Hello and welcome back to Football Daily. Now, while the World Cup is the pinnacle of most players' careers, for others it can be a total disaster. Here's 10 examples. 10. Nigel De Jong. No one summed up the 2010 World Cup final quite like Nigel De Jong. Although the Dutch were far from boring en route, scoring 12 goals in 7 games and defeating the likes of Uruguay and Brazil, for the showpiece game, Bert van Marwijk set them up to defend deep and hit on the counter. As you would expect, the Spanish had 60% possession, but it was the brutal nature of the Dutch play that brought the ire of the watching public. Howard Webb was forced to book 5 players in the opening 28 minutes, and the Iranier finished with 7 yellow cards and 1 red, which went to centre-back Heitinga. But no challenge matched the violence of Nigel De Jong's chest-high karate kick on Xabi Alonso, which somehow escaped a red card. Webb has since admitted his regret over the incident, claiming it wasn't just a red card, but an arrestable offence. Although De Jong went on to play 6 of the Iranier's 7 games 4 years later, his reputation will forever be tainted by that one moment. 9. Steven Gerrard. Despite being England's top scorer in the 2006 World Cup with 2, it's fair to say Liverpool's Captain Fantastic never delivered on football's grandest stage. Stripped of the vice-captaincy by Fabio Capello in the build-up to the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, Gerrard was then awkwardly re-awarded the Arbad after Terry was demoted following revelations about his private life. He got off to a dream start in the opening game, latching onto a Heskey layoff after only 4 minutes to give England the lead against the US. But that was as good as it got for them, as the Americans came back to draw and England scraped out of their group before being humiliated by Germany in the last 16. Gerrard, meanwhile, only added 1 assist in the subsequent 4 games. If that was disappointing, 2014 was a disaster, with England exiting at the group stages after failing to win a game. Their captain's World Cup record reads: played 12, scored 3 and assisted 1. For a player who possessed the extraordinary talents that he did, it simply wasn't good enough. 8. Alfredo Di Stefano. Going from the slightly harsh to the unfortunate, Alfredo Di Stefano is undoubtedly one of the greatest players of all time, having scored at least 23 goals in 11 consecutive seasons between 1950 and 1961. His razor-sharp finishing and majestic goal average led Real Madrid to 8 La Liga titles and 5 consecutive European Cups. But he never got his chance to show his talents at the World Cup, with Argentina boycotting the 1950 edition in the midst of a conflict with the Brazilian Football Federation. 4 years later, having scored 111 goals in 125 games in the intermittent period, Argentina again refused to enter. And 8 years later, having acquired Spanish citizenship, Di Stefano was set to represent Spain, but sadly had to pull out with an injury. That meant that when the forward retired in 1966, having scored over 400 career goals, he had never played at a World Cup. Messi's doubters claim he can't be considered the greatest of all time until he wins the fabled tournament. So what does that make Di Stefano? 7. Patrice Evra. Left-back Patrice Evra won 8 league titles in spells at Man United and Juventus, and also picked up the 2008 Champions League. But just 2 years after that victory, 29-year-old Evra was to have the first of 2 blots on an otherwise impressive copybook. Having been finalists in 2006, the French public expected a lot of a squad that included Ribéry, Malouda and Henry, but results were catastrophic. Despite having 10 shots on target, they drew 0-0 with Uruguay, which they backed up with a 2-0 defeat to Mexico. After the game, Anelka laid into French coach Raymond Domenech and was sent home for refusing to apologise. At this point, the squad went into meltdown. They boycotted training in protest, and Captain Evra was filmed in a heated argument with their fitness coach. French President Sarkozy and Sports Minister Bachelot intervened, and Evra was dropped for the team's defeat to South Africa, who were ranked 38 places below them in the FIFA rankings. With their team and leader branded a disgrace, the squad was forced to fly home in economy with their heads hanging in shame. 6. Kleberson. In direct contrast to the first 4 players on our list, who have made over 1,700 appearances for European clubs between them, Kleberson made just 20 for Man United and 45 for Besiktas. But yet the midfielder, who retired with the Fort Lauderdale Strikers in the US second tier, is the only World Cup winner on this list. He didn't just play a minor role either. After being benched for their first 4 matches, he came on against England in the quarter-finals, and his crunching tackle on Paul Scholes was crucial to Rivaldo's equaliser in their 2-1 victory. Then on he started as Brazil dispatched Turkey and Germany to lift their 5th World Cup. Now hot property with Barcelona, Newcastle and Celtic all keen on signing him, a year later Sir Alex Ferguson managed to secure his signature as an £8 million replacement for Juan Sebastian Veron. But the Brazilian was injured in only his second game and hardly made an appearance, as Man United finished 15 points adrift in both campaigns. The pinnacle of Kleberson's career undoubtedly created unsustainable standards that he simply couldn't match. 5. Santiago Cañizares. The year is 2002 and Valencia are one of the best teams in the world, having won 1 La Liga and reached 2 Champions League finals in the last 3 seasons under the tutelage of first Hector Cooper and then Rafa Benitez. Their squad may have contained Roberto Ayala, Vicente and Pablo Aimar, but their key player was Spanish keeper Santiago Cañizares. He had conceded just 100 league goals in the previous 3 seasons, 32 fewer than Real Madrid and 40 fewer than Barcelona. Unsurprisingly, Cañizares was Spain's number 1 heading into the 2002 World Cup, but just days before the squad flew to the Far East, he smashed a bottle of aftershave on his foot, severing a tendon. His replacement, a 21-year-old Iker Casillas, played well as Spain were knocked out in the quarter-finals on penalties by host South Korea. Casillas would go on to make 167 appearances for La Roca, winning 2 Euros and a World Cup, while the unfortunate Cañizares would only win a further 10 caps for his country. 4. Frank Rijkaard. It's no secret that there is no love lost between Germany and the Netherlands. A hatred manufactured in the Second World War, it is exacerbated on the football pitch. They have had some huge battles, from the 1974 World Cup final, which the Dutch call the mother of all defeats, to a qualifier 16 years later when the Dutch fans unfurled a banner comparing Germany's captain Lothar Matthäus to Adolf Hitler. So it was clear that their meeting in the second round of the 1990 World Cup would be eventful, and only 20 minutes into the clash, centre-back Rijkaard skied down Rudi Völler, a challenge which earned him a booking, his second of the tournament. Knowing he would miss the quarter-finals should they make it there, Rijkaard lost his head and spat on Völler's back. And just a few minutes later, the referee sent them both off after a tangle in the penalty area. And it didn't stop there. As they were leaving the pitch, the experienced Rijkaard gobbed into Völler's permed mullet. Although his subsequent apology was accepted by Völler, Rijkaard, or the Llama as he became known, had tarnished his reputation forever. 3. Harald Schumacher. Patrick Battiston may have won 5 Ligue 1 titles, the 1984 Euros and 56 caps for France, but he is most remembered for the 1982 World Cup semi-final against Germany. Despite their appalling record against Die Mannschaft with 1 win in 8, they were slight favourites. Germany had lost to Algeria in the opening game of the tournament and scraped through to the second group stage at England's expense. With the game poised at 1-1 after 50 minutes, Battiston came on and 10 minutes later was sent through on goal by Platini. The defender was then brutally poleaxed by German goalkeeper Harald Schumacher, and the collision knocked some of his teeth out, damaged his vertebrae and left him in a coma. The game finished 3-3 after extra time, and West Germany won 5-4 on penalties, with Schumacher saving 2. The keeper, who hadn't tendered to the defender and then jokingly offered to pay for his new teeth in his post-match interview, was voted as France's most hated man after the tournament, ahead of Hitler. 2. Rob Green. England have had their fair few errors at international tournaments, from Waddle, Pearce and Southgate and so many more failing from 12 yards out, and Wilkins, Beckham and Rooney all being given their marching orders at crucial moments. But without doubt the most catastrophic mistake in English football history happened 40 minutes into their opening game of the 2010 World Cup against the United States. 1-0 up after 4 minutes, England looked comfortable and fans began to believe. But those hopes were extinguished in calamitous fashion when Clint Dempsey took a shot with his weaker foot from 25 yards. It was a nothing strike, a complete dribbler, but Rob Green inexcusably let it slip through his grasp and over the line. From then on, the tournament was a disaster from an England perspective and ended with a comprehensive battering in the last 16 by Germany. As for Green, he only won 1 more cap and is now the third choice keeper at Huddersfield. 1. Jean-François Larios. It's fair to say that Jean-François Larios is not a household name. The midfielder played the majority of his career with Saint-Etienne before going on a whistle-stop tour of mediocre European clubs, representing 6 in his final 5 years. But he was talented enough to earn 17 caps for France and score 5 goals in the process. But he is infamous for one moment. Called up for the 1982 World Cup in Spain, he started their first game against England, which they lost 3-1. After this defeat, the French media inquisition began, and most blamed Les Bleus' high-intensity training in the Pyrenees, believing that it was negatively impacting on their players' fitness. But all interest in their training became irrelevant as stories emerged suggesting that Larios was having an affair with the wife of France's golden boy and club teammate, Michel Platini. From that moment, not only was Larios' World Cup ruined, but also his career. He was only capped once more for his country, and once he moved to Atletico Madrid, he suffered a very serious knee injury. He was never the same again, and never remains at another club for longer than one season.
Well done! You've finished the video. For some more great content, click right here, you dirty dogs, and as ever, don't forget to like and subscribe. I mean it.